Welcome back, everybody, to the podcast. I'm really excited about today's episode. It was a bit of a last-minute sort of invitation. I actually messaged Mr. Uptin yesterday to say, hey, man, you available tomorrow at 2 o'clock? And graciously, he accepted and said yes. So I'm really excited for a couple of reasons about this, because as a content creator, I get really excited about people who are doing the things that I want to be doing in the future as well. And Uptin has over 2 million followers on both TikTok and YouTube and Facebook. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And then he talks about tech and money and cultures and quite a huge variety of different things. Has an agency for content and just all around baller. So it's going to be a really exciting podcast. So thank you very much for joining on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We met on Clubhouse, which I think is really cool. I have like 5 or 6 good Clubhouse friends, which like who would have thought, you know?
I know during the height of the pandemic.
During the height of the pandemic, we'd make Clubhouse friends, yeah.
I think it was just the explosion when Clubhouse first came out as well. We were in one room, it migrated over to Instagram, had a chat, and I've been following your journey actually ever since. And one of the things that I really like about your content is the second it starts, it's engaging. And you continuously have these open loops and questions that keep you engaged the entire way through. So just curiously, is that something that is completely intentional on your behalf? Because as a content creator, you have to actually understand the psychology behind every video. So is that something you deliberately do, or you just like telling stories?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, both. I love telling stories. That's my biggest passion. But when it comes to the hooks, it's called a hook, right? It's called a hook for a reason. You have to hook your audience. If you don't get them within the first 1 to 3 seconds, you're going to lose them. And I think what so many content creators still do is, hey guys, today I am at blah, 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 blah. No. Like hook them with a better, cut out the hey guys and get straight to it. Start by a shocking fact or start with a question, something like that that's going to make people want to watch. And I used to, my background actually is traditional TV. I worked at MTV back in New York during the hype of MTV, or actually kind of during the decline of MTV. And then I worked at CNBC, the TV news network. And a lot of times when you have a TV audience, they're already invested. They're already like sitting on their couch or making dinner and watching. So you don't need to have a hook. You can just tell the story however you want to tell the story. But when it comes to social media in general, you really got to capture their attention with something interesting.
I love that. What is it? I think you have to imagine that your audience is as a third grade education. They have no idea who you are or what you do. And trying to get that hooked in the first second is really, really difficult, but it's really, really cool the way that you do it. So let's get a little bit of a background on you. What's your story? What's your journey? What put you into the idea of traveling the world and creating content? What inspired you to be able to do that? And was it a natural progression, or something you just started visualizing as a kid or something like that? What's your story?
As a kid, I was obsessed with like the local news. I grew up in the US and I was always see like the local news trucks and I'd get obsessed. Like, oh, I want to be that one day, just like a local news reporter. I think because I just had a passion for storytelling. And then I ended up living in New York, working at one of my first jobs out of college was MTV. So I worked at MTV as a production assistant, and then I made my way into MTV News. And I always thought of my time at MTV News as like the graduate school for media, because I learned how to like write, run the Twitter, film, edit, a little bit of everything, write articles. And I think what happened while I was there, it was great. It was like my grad school, but it got to a point where I remember one weekend, Josh, I was on call because there were rumors that Justin Bieber was going to break up with Selena Gomez. So my boss called me. He's like, listen, I need you to be on call. Be by your phone. If you got to come into the office to handle this breaking news, I need you ready. And that was the moment where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? There are doctors on call, and here I was, like a news assistant being on call waiting for Justin Bieber to maybe break up with his girlfriend at the time. So then I started to apply to real news networks. So I applied to CNN, I applied to ABC News, wherever I could get my foot in the door, and I got a job at CNBC. And at first I wasn't that excited. I'm like, oh, CNBC, stock markets, it's a bit dense of a topic. Is that really what's going to keep me passionate? But this was back in around 2014, 2015. And I realized like around that time, we were seeing the emergence of huge tech companies bubbling up. And I'm not talking about obviously like the Facebooks and Googles, but Airbnb and Uber and WeWork, which isn't a tech company, but these really exciting companies that were really impacting the way we lived and worked. And I was like, you know what? It's actually kind of exciting. A lot of my friends were getting into entrepreneurship and ditching their traditional jobs. And I realized actually business news is kind of sexy. It's money at the end of the day, and money impacts everything any of us do every single day. And so I took the job, and I really enjoyed it. I worked in New York for a few years as a producer. And then I started covering more of those tech entrepreneurship stories about Silicon Valley and things that were happening in New York. But something was missing. I was mostly behind the camera, and I was mostly like interviewing guests to bring them on the live TV channel. And I wanted to be able to tell the stories myself rather than hand the notes to that TV anchor and give them, ask these questions, right? I wanted to ask the questions. So in order for me to do that, I had two choices. I either had to go to like a small town in the US and start on the ground up as a local TV reporter, like a small town in North Dakota or something. And most of those stories are like murders and fires, right? It's like the local news stuff. Or I could go international. So obviously I really pushed for international, and I really wanted, to move to Dubai or London. And CNBC told me, well, what about Singapore? I'd barely been to Asia. So I was like, why not? So I took a one-way flight to Singapore, 17 hours, one of the longest flights in the world. And
That's
I moved
the same as Australia, just by the way. Every time.
yeah, now. And so I moved to Singapore, not knowing anything about, about the country. And once I got there, I got to do live TV. And I actually really loved it. It was great. Waking up at 5 a.m., that adrenaline of being live on set in studio, interviewing people. And then they came to me, this was in 2016, they said, hey, why don't you start us a YouTube channel? And at first I resisted. I said, I didn't move all the way across the world to make YouTube videos. And my boss at the time, he said, I wouldn't discount the future growth of YouTube. And so I did. I started to do YouTube, and I fell in love. I started making vlogs. And one thing I noticed, Josh, was every time I would bring my cameraman around, the views on our Facebook and YouTube wouldn't be as strong as when I just did this selfie mode. And I remember at one point I was using an iPhone 7 and I was doing selfie mode, and I did a video about digital nomads in Bali. This was like the first time anyone was hearing that term, digital nomad. I was like, what is a digital nomad? I got to go find out. And we posted that video on Facebook, and it got over 10 million views. And that was our highest video that we had ever done. And again, all selfie mode. I edited it myself. It was really kind of a rough cut. And that same video, we played it on TV, right? So even though it was shot on an iPhone 7 in selfie mode, we played that on TV globally on CNBC. So what that taught me was that you don't need a nice DSLR, you don't need a beautiful set anymore to tell a good story. And in fact, sometimes your audience wants you to not have those things because it makes it more relatable. And so within those 3 or 4 years of building out our social media team at CNBC, we got about 1 or 2 million followers. And this was a team of 10 of us working across countries, right? But then I saw people like, who's now my friend Drew Binsky, who had over 10 million followers in that same time. And this was just a guy in a backpack traveling the world. So this told me something. I'm like, you know what? You are actually more powerful as your own brand than you are with a big brand, as your own brand than you are with a big brand. And so 2 years ago, during the pandemic, I was still living in Asia, still working for CNBC, and it was time. I was like, all right, it's time to start on my own. So I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going all in, because I had 0 of my own followers, right? We just had the CNBC accounts. And I knew it was going to be a challenge, but I was like, you know what? I'm in. I'm going all in.
And you've already developed the skills by that point. Like if you've already proved to yourself that you can gain millions of followers for somebody else, why not yourself, right?
I think so. And a lot of times people are like, wow, in 2 years you gained 2 million followers. That's insane, right? And it's like, I feel, I'm very grateful and proud and lucky. But at the same time, yeah, it's like I can't discount those years of experience that I learned making digital videos, right? That's what helped me get to that point.
Yeah, it took you 10 years to have an overnight success, right?
Yeah, that's the quote I was trying to think of. Exactly.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've noticed that the videos that I've really tried to push and think, yeah, it's going to be the best thing ever, flops completely. And the ones that just raw, I put maybe 10, 15 minutes of time into it and it goes viral. That actually happened with one of my videos that got me over 350,000 followers just from one video, right? So it was a memory test. So I'd show 30 images and then I'd say, can you recall them? And everyone's like, obviously,
I
no.
remember that video.
Yeah. And then the other side was a set of images they haven't seen paired with the set they have. And every single time people can recall almost 100%. And I put maybe 10, 15 minutes into the video. And I asked a couple of people if they liked it and they're like, it's too long, it won't do well. Next thing you know, it's already at 1 million views, and then it goes all the way up to 11 million views, something like 30,000 comments or something crazy. I grew over 350,000 followers in 2 or 3 days. It was the most insane thing to just watch. You scroll, you refresh TikTok, and you've got another 1,000 followers.
Wow.
Every single time. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
And all the content that I've noticed that are just raw, me giving something like an emotion or a story, or just me just expressing who I am rather than trying to be anything, the most authentic self always wins.
So true.
I actually just had a friend of mine message me like, hey, I'm about to start doing TikTok ads. What's some advice? I'm like, don't make it look like an ad.
Yeah.
If you've already had a piece of content that goes viral, use that, put a call to action and run it. You know, don't make it an ad, because our eyes are now so sensitive to ads. We see a perfect quality camera video or graphics and images and stuff pop up and we instantly swipe.
It's crazy. Yeah. The more polished it looks, the more likely we are to swipe. Absolutely.
Yeah, because we're in such a day and age where authenticity and realness trumps just trying to be the flashy thing anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so if I think I recognized this back in 2019 from, do you know Frank Kern?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was taking some of his courses on marketing. He's just direct response marketer. He'd do the same thing, just an iPhone, selfie mode, just with a smile saying, hey, this is what I got. Here's how it's going to help you. Here's what to do next. And those win every single time over the flashy digital marketing where it's like amazing camera and photo shoots and all this sort of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a really, really powerful way to do it just for anybody doing content creation.
Yeah.
Make
yeah.
it
And
as live as possible.
Yeah. And there's even a term now, UGC, user generated content. And this is what, so in addition to my journey as a content creator, last year I started my own video agency. So we're a team now of about 5 based in Dubai. Uptin Media is the name. And what we do is we plug in for brands TikTok accounts and Instagram and YouTube shorts. And what we do is we give them faces, because most brands don't do faces, right? They might work with agencies that make amazing polished ads, but they don't know how to make it relatable. And that's where we come in. So we're seeing a huge demand for this UGC style content. Yeah.
I think everybody's just sick of the flashiness on Instagram where it's all filtered and it's trying to be perfect, a life you can never measure up to.
Yeah.
TikTok comes along, people are
real.
filming in their bed or in their car,
Yeah.
and it blows up.
Yeah.
Because people actually want that authenticity, the connection to the person they're actually listening to or watching.
Absolutely.
So just to shift gears a little bit, for me, I asked you this just before the podcast, but for everybody listening, is Uptin your real name?
Uptin is my real first legal name, yes.
Okay, and what does Uptin mean?
Ooh. It's actually a Persian name, but it was translated. So it was a Persian name. If you were to take it directly into English, it would be Abtin. But my parents westernized it because I was born in the US, so it's Uptin, Uptin. But Uptin is not the most uncommon. It's often a last name, Uptin, Upton. But my parents, again, spelled it with an I for whatever reason, so I'm Uptin with an I. But what's really cool about that is I've been able to get all the socials just at Uptin.
So
YouTube, Insta, I mean, you name it, I got it. Twitter, it's just at Uptin, knock on wood.
I think you might be the only person with that name now.
Just the first real name, yeah, 5 letters. I'm very grateful for a weird name.
Yeah, can you make your theme song, Uptown Boy?
Uptown Boy, yeah.
He's been traveling around the world.
Yeah, that one or Uptown Funk, I get that one a lot as well.
Right, fair enough. So one of the things that people ask me is how to be able to tell a good story. Generally speaking, you need to have the experiences to be able to tell a good story. And a lot of people don't have a life worth telling. And for you, you travel, you said you've done 24 countries this year already, which is more than, at this point, 2 per month. So you must have some of the most crazy and incredible stories to just consistently throw away in a way that's really engaging and exciting. And one of the things that I really like about your content is you do these little challenges in different countries. So I think it's like $60 a day in Bali, what it can get you. And $60 a day in Dubai, I think it's probably the coffees we're drinking,
Probably.
you know? So what are some of the most incredible experiences that you've had, if you had to be able to somehow sift through all of yours in this moment? What do you think is one of the most impactful experiences that you've had? One that maybe either brought a tear to your eye or so much joy that just it fills you up, something that maybe might be able to inspire or motivate the audience?
I was in El Salvador earlier this year and I did a story about Bitcoin. So this is the first country which made Bitcoin legal tender. And I think a lot of times you read the articles and you think that it was a colossal failure. I mean, the big media loved to bash it and say no one's using it and this is stupid. But actually spending a week there and interviewing people and understanding like that bigger depth was very rewarding. And I think, and giving voices, I think that's what one of my biggest passions is just like giving voices to situations. Lebanon currency crisis last year, economic crisis happening in Lebanon, lots and lots of daily articles from big media. But what about hearing the voice of how someone sounds amidst a crisis? And I think being able to tell those stories, there was one woman I met in Beirut named Maral, and she was an artist. And she was talking about how the crisis impacted her, how she couldn't afford electricity and bread. I mean, the price of bread had surged, right? So now she was making her own bread. And she's an artist. This isn't somebody that had ever had to struggle to get by, because she could afford to be an artist, right? And so I think like that was a very impactful story. And now she's become a friend. I keep in touch with her. So these kinds of stories where it's like really going beyond the headline and giving the deeper meaning behind what I'm seeing. And then the other kind of ethos that I have as a storyteller and content creator is, I'm American, and born and raised in the US. I moved out in 2016. And when I left the US, I realized how naive and ignorant I was, right? With this kind of very sometimes typical American mindset where we are not very aware of other cultures or geography, you name it, right? The jokes are all there on TikTok. So now one of my prides is like going into situations and educating my former self. What should I have known? What would I have loved to know? But tell it in a fun, dynamic way, interesting and engaging way, right? Not in a preachy way, not in a condescending way, but in a, hey, did you know in this country they do that? In Vietnam, this is happening. In Argentina, they have 50% annual inflation. That means, that 10% inflation that you're seeing in the United States and you think it's bad because it's the highest it's been in 40 years, Argentina, 50% every year they're losing the value of their currency.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for people with salaries, for buying groceries, and like actually going there and interviewing them and following them?
I actually was in Argentina early this year as well. So I experienced it firsthand. I think when we got there, we exchanged around $100 to $150. We were there for 10 days, and that was all we needed.
Wow.
And we weren't, it's not like we were conserving money either, or preserving it. We were actually just buying whatever we want and thinking about it. And for most people, that is a lot of money there.
Yeah.
I pay a girl from Argentina each month to do work on some of my social media. And for her, the amount that you pay from here it feels like nothing.
Yeah.
But there, it's a really good salary that you need to work about 10 years to get to that sort of position.
Oh my God, wow.
So it's really, really difficult in certain places like that. And we kind of forget that a lot when you're in bubbles like Dubai, where you recognize that you've got a very affluent lifestyle for a very mid amount of money comparative to what you make. So a lot of people don't recognize how difficult it actually is in other places in the world, like Argentina and lots of places in Africa as well, where the inflation is insane, where the price of your coffee goes up while you're drinking it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's insane. So when you started your content creation, I just wanted to shift the gear a little bit there. How did you begin to monetize it, and how did you know that this was going to work for you? Like, what was your first stepping stone from, I'm going to leave the corporate life of, TV stations, and how am I going to essentially make that first money to start traveling the world? Because it's not a small expense. If you're doing 2 to 3 flights a month, that's not a small amount of money that you're paying for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I left CNBC, it was kind of like, how can I make money with the experience I've had? Whether I like doing it or not, like how can I make money as a freelancer, right? Or as a solopreneur? And it was really interesting. Like I didn't necessarily know I was going to go out on my own. I started to apply for jobs at like Airbnb and Facebook, because the biggest reason someone leaves journalism is to go work in PR, public relations and communications. They can make twice the salary. So I was like, okay, I'll go work at one of those big tech companies, free lunch, in New York or San Francisco, right? And I remember, Josh, like I was applying for jobs, and I remember like I'd feel this feeling in my gut. I was like, what is that? And it was actually a fear. It was anxiety and fear. And when I intuitively listened to my body, it was like, I need to go work for myself. Like I can't go work for another company. It was time. And so what I did was I asked myself two things, like, okay, I'm going to start pursuing content. I'm going to start making videos, but how am I going to make money before I start monetizing that content? So I did PR, actually. Like I had my own clients. People were reaching out to me on LinkedIn. Oh, you left CNBC. Can you run my PR? I didn't love it, but I did it, right? It was a form of making some money. And so for the first 6 months, I did that maybe 10 to 15 hours a week while also pursuing content. And I didn't monetize any of my accounts until about 1 year. 1 year. It took about a year to start monetizing all my accounts of consistent content. So what I love to tell people is commit to consistency. Because what I did was I said, all right, I'm launching my YouTube channel. I'm going to have 3 videos per week, no matter what. And TikTok was doing 2 or 3 per day, no matter what. The importance of committing to consistency is huge, because I said, I'm going to do 3 videos on YouTube per week, no matter what, for 1 year. And then I'll judge if this is right for me. Because what happens, most people try and pursue content creation. They do it for 2-3 months and they have 1 or 2 hits and a lot of flops, and they give up. They get deflated. They get demotivated, right? So I said, the only way I know I'm going to get over that psychological barrier of being addicted to the numbers and psychoanalyzing my every video is if I just commit to consistency. And that actually freed me up. I didn't really care about the views that much the first year. There were times, of course, I fall into the trap where it's like, oh, this one flopped. Oh my God, this is embarrassing. Only 67 views on a YouTube video. I used to make videos for CNBC that could get millions, But every time those thoughts would come into my head, it's like, all right, have this discussion at the end of the year, the 1 year that you've committed to. And that really, really helped me a lot, because I did have some I had a video to this day, my highest 1.7 million on YouTube, which is really hard on YouTube, right? So it's like, once I had that, I think that was a big, like, okay, I've got this, It might still take a while to get to 100,000 followers. It might still take a while to get any substantial revenue. But the fact that I could do a video that gets this many views, it affirmed to myself that I'm onto something here. And then after that first year, the money, really just started coming in on Facebook, on YouTube, TikTok as well, and now Instagram.
It's a fantastic point. One of the biggest things, especially when it comes to habit change and, shifting your identity and reaping what you sow, is consistency. The way that I kind of think about it is, imagine your project is like planting a seed. So whatever project you're thinking about, whether it's content creation or if it's, starting a yoga journey or whatever you're going to be doing, that's the seed that you're planting. The consistency is watering it and it's starting to grow over time. But what most people do is the seed starts to sprout, it starts to grow the tree, the fruit starts to grow, and they stop being consistent, and now you're choking the tree out with the weeds. So the tree is just slowly dying because of a lack of consistency. And I've noticed it in every area of my content creation as well, where it's, if I don't post a video for a week, you see a huge difference in the numbers. You see a huge difference in the way that you feel about creating content as well. And generally, I try to get out at least 1 to 2 pieces a day across the platforms and everything as well. Not necessarily YouTube, shorts, absolutely, just repurpose it or whatever. But in general, the times where you see the best results from your efforts, whether it's the gym, whether it's content, whether it's yoga, it doesn't really matter, is with consistency.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the analogy of the stone chipper. It's like he's hitting the rock over and over again with the pick, and one time, eventually 100,000 hits in or something, it cracks. Was it the last hit, or was it the 100,000 hits leading up to it that made it crack? Or is it the last sentence of a book that finishes the book, or all the lines leading up to it? So you can't expect to get to an outcome without the consistency and the effort produced throughout it.
Yeah. I think that's huge, that consistency. And then the other one on that note is shiny object syndrome.
Oof, yeah.
Which a lot of people like us have, probably our friends, where it's like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. And then 2 weeks later, oh, let me do that thing, right? The shiny object, which whatever. And I remember before I really pushed off my content creation journey, I bought like 3 or 4 URL domain names, one for my personal brand, one for my agency, one for something else. And I remember it was like my biggest fear in that moment was like, imagine a year from now when I get that email saying, hey, would you like to renew, or we're going to auto renew these URL names. And I was like, imagine a year from now. And I'm like, oh yeah, what happened to those? That fear is what drove me to stay committed. It's like, I don't want to have that feeling of, oh no, like I dropped the ball on another project.
And what's your drive? What's your why behind what you do? Is it to inspire insight in other people? Is it to influence in a positive way? What's your drive towards being consistent to be able to grow a platform? Because some people start it because they want to be famous or make money, and that's just a short-lived process that no one actually cares about deeply. So what's your reason to get up in the morning that allows you to be consistent and make those 2 videos a day, make the YouTube video 3 times a week?
Yeah, I think it was Casey Neistat, I think, who said, I don't make videos to make money, I make money to make videos. And that's kind of how I feel. I feel like, monetizing these channels has afforded me the opportunity to travel, which is not lost on me how lucky I am. Like, I used to work for a company where I got at one point 10 vacation days a year, And there was no remote work. You're in the office every day by a certain time, and you're there till a certain time, Monday through Friday, right? So because I've experienced that, I mean, what I'm saying I've experienced is not a big deal. 90% of the world population experiences that. But for me, it's not lost on me like how fortunate I am to be living in a time where I get a monthly check from Facebook and YouTube, So when going back to my big why, a lot of it does come down to the expanding the horizons and perspective of my viewers, of my audience, of especially Americans, right? Like I said, they hear one thing about Dubai, well, this is what it's like to be in Dubai. They hear one thing about the crisis in Lebanon, this is what it's like. And I think that's what makes me the most proud, is when I see those comments like, wow, I had no idea that Iran, I went to Iran, I'm Iranian by background, and that I did a huge video series on that, and I got a lot of comments. I had no idea Iran would be like this. I had no idea they had shopping malls. I mean, it's basic stuff, right? But that was so rewarding to me as a content creator, to be able to say, yes, for years you've seen the headlines, you've seen CNN say this, and that's a whole other topic. But what about the people who live there, the 80 million people who live there? What is a day like for them? And I did that. I did a day in the life of a distant cousin of mine on my YouTube channel, right? And so to see those kind of comments, that really drives me to educate and inform, but in a fun way.
I really love that. I have some clients that are in the States, and when you're in Dubai, they ask you all the questions. Do you see Lamborghinis? I'm like, yeah, every day. It becomes normal. Not like, wow, I get to see Lamborghinis every day. Pff, what about it? But you just become accustomed to that sort of lifestyle. You get to see all this sort of stuff in front of your face at all times. And when I first moved to Dubai, I was Googling everything. Do I have to wear long sleeve shirts in the mall? Am I allowed to wear shorts? Am I allowed to speak to ladies or anything like that? That was my mindset before I moved here. And ever since I've moved here, I've been educating people that I know, and also putting it online as much as possible to show, no, this is actually completely different to what you expect. And once you actually start doing it and start traveling, everything starts to change in your mind. Like I went to Thailand and Malaysia this year, completely different to what I expected. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that. And seeing some of your videos, I'm like, wow, I didn't know you could do that in Bali or like Argentina or all these places. It's surprising, and it's eye-opening. So it's really, really cool that that's your reason why, is to kind of explain and show different sides of the world, and you just love doing it.
Yeah, and I think it was embarrassment, just like what you said. It's like when I think about the version of myself before I got on that plane to Singapore, it's like I'm embarrassed with how little I knew about the difference between Thailand and Indonesia or Malaysia, And now I've been to all of these countries multiple times, and I don't blame Americans for not knowing, but the goal here is to make it easy for them to know, to understand some of these differences, to learn,
So you've unintentionally become a news outlet.
Yeah, I mean, I think times have changed a lot, and we're all journalists, right? We're all citizen journalists now, and I think the key is to be able to adapt. Honestly, if we were still living in a blogs era where everyone's writing blogs, I would be a blogger. I wouldn't pick up a camera. I wouldn't have my face in it, But that's just the medium that we're at right now, and I'm very lucky because I love telling videos, because there's so many cool aspects of telling a story through video, from the music to the hook and all of that.
Do you find it tedious ever, or not really? Or you just get excited to do it? You have video editors and stuff as well, right?
Yeah, so I've been lucky to build out a team. I have an editor in Turkey. I have some in Russia. And I think that helps me a lot, right? You know how much time editing takes. So if I'm starting to find something tedious, I stop myself. I'm like, okay, how can I outsource this and get some assistance on this? My challenge sometimes actually becomes burnout. And it's funny, someone asked me this the other day. They're like, you output so many videos, don't you ever get burnt out? And I thought about it, and I said, it's like, when I'm feeling overwhelmed or anxious, I open up Adobe Premiere Pro and I'll just edit a TikTok because that's like my meditation, or that's my like sewing for some people. It's like doing a little edit. So it's like, I think the only times I genuinely am at risk of burning out is when I put too much pressure on myself. Like, oh, I just got back from Egypt and I have 15 videos that I want to do, 4 of them documentary style, 25 TikToks, and then I'm starting to film the World Cup next week. You know, like if I find myself in that situation, burnout happens, because by the time I'm starting a new shoot or a new project, I have all these other videos on my mind. So that's something I've really struggled with this year and learned how to overcome, is like knowing when to say no to myself, to my own ideas. Oh, but I want to do this. Oh, but I'd love a video about that. I'm like, no, just focus on these 8 instead of 10, you know? And then also giving myself more time when I travel. The old me, I think you too, like before pandemic, I remember once back to when I had like 10 vacation days a year, I flew from New York to Poland, 3 nights in Poland, 3 nights in Beirut, 3 nights in Cairo, and then back to New York. And that was not a big deal. It was like, oh, you know, I took a week off work and I wanted to see these 3 countries. Like, I cannot believe now, looking back at that, like the amount of travels and visas and different cultures and cuisine. You know, that sounds exhausting, but I did it because I had, you know, limited vacation days. But now everywhere I go, I want to stay at least a week. I never want to get in for 2 days just to, even if I can film a story in 1 or 2 days, I'm staying a week because I want to experience the culture a little bit deeper, and maybe even start editing while I'm there so I don't get back to Dubai and feel overwhelmed.
I love that. Whenever I travel anywhere, I very rarely do the most touristic stuff as well, and which I think is one of the reasons why I resonate with your videos, is because you go deep into the culture. Whenever I go to any country, I check to see what the locals do. I will see if there's anybody that I know that has an introduction or referral to somebody that actually does local things. And when I was in Mauritius, actually, I had a friend of a friend that was there, met up with them. They took us to their family's house for a local cuisine where the mother cooked, and it was incredible. Like, you don't get those sort of experiences if you just want to go and see the Eiffel Tower. You know, it's just for sightseeing and tourism. I don't personally enjoy that as much. Some people do, but I love connecting with the culture and understanding a different mindset and actual how they live, which I think is why I like your videos so much as well.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite videos was meeting someone in Tripoli, Lebanon, a 25-year-old, and just spending a day with him. And I was introduced to a friend, but I didn't know this guy. And I just met his mom. She cooked us lunch, and I just started filming the whole thing. And it was so much more memorable than any sort of monument or landmark that I could have gone to in Lebanon.
Yeah, I love that. If you're watching this and you normally just go to landmarks and sightseeing, definitely try to get in part of the culture. You'll create experiences you've never had otherwise.
Yeah, and sometimes you need to go to the landmarks, but then stay an extra few days to get deeper into the culture. And Airbnb I find to be a great platform, especially if you do like a private room within a house, because then you'll meet the host. And also another one I love is just you go onto Google and type in free walking tours. I do those almost everywhere I go. So it's a free tour, 1 to 3 hours in almost any major city. And then you tip at the end. But what makes it so great is that the person doing it is really like passionate local, right? They're a passionate local. They're not working for a tour company for 20 years, like shuffling us tourists in like cattle, right? They really they're always usually students or grad students or something. And so you really get to meet a fun local. Yeah.
Love that. What would be your 3 biggest tips for people who are traveling to get the most out of a new experience and a new culture and a new country?
The 3 biggest tips for somebody traveling to another country, I would say number 1 is think about your accommodation. Try and avoid hotels. Even though I do stay in hotels quite a bit, as much as I can, either stay in an Airbnb, and especially if you want to meet a local, do a private room. It'll also be a bit cheaper, so you'll meet your host. Hopefully they're actually local to that place. The second one is do a free walking tour, because it's going to be a really good way to understand a city, and it's always 9 out of 10 times it's going to be a local who's showing you around. And then the third one, I think too many people go and try and find like the top rated restaurants or even the touristy restaurants. I would say, like, when you're looking at Google Maps and previewing those images, look for restaurants without any tourists in them. If you see everybody who looks like everybody of that country, that's a good sign to go to that restaurant, because my best and most unique experiences when I travel are really like immersing myself into a local restaurant where everyday people eat. Not the nicest restaurants. Of course, they're usually never the nicest restaurants. It's the everyday restaurants where everybody goes. And Mexico City was a good example of that. I started the year in Mexico City, I was with my family. We went to some nice restaurants. You know, you look to your left, you look to your right. It's Americans from the U.S. And then we went to some just mid-tier restaurants the last couple days. Those were my best, not only meals but also memories, because you see the people coming from work, you see the mom and the son. You know, you really immerse yourself in that culture.
My brother has this saying when we went to Thailand, because he came as well. It's like, if it has plastic chairs and a plastic table, it's a good place.
That's very true. Yeah, particularly for Southeast Asia. Yeah, definitely.
You generally find the best cuisines and everything.
Oh yeah, the food is so great there. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to get hungry after that. One of the things I was actually questioning earlier is the amount that you travel and your location independent. Does that make it difficult to have intimate friendships or relationships or deep connections with people, as you're always jumping cities and it's very difficult to be connected for a long period of time? Or do you like it that way?
So I've been nomadic for 2 years now. I haven't had a mattress or my go-to coffee mug. I've been completely nomadic, and it's a lot of pros and a lot of cons. The pros are that you save a lot of money on rent that you can then put into flights and hotels and Airbnbs. The cons are losing the ability to create a routine. I really miss cooking. Like, I used to love cooking meals, right? I haven't really had a home cooked meal in a while. And then, yeah, friendships. I would say, to be honest with you, I would say if somebody was new to this lifestyle, friendship would be extremely hard. Like, if they just said, okay, I'm going to move out of my home in Melbourne or whatever and be a digital nomad and go to 15 countries this year, friendship would be really hard because they would be relying just on FaceTime and WhatsApp calls to their friends back home. Because I lived in, Singapore and Hong Kong, so I lived abroad for 4 years, I built up a really big network of people who then moved back to Paris and back to London and here in Dubai, right? I've also spent a lot of time digital nomading in Bali, which has a huge digital nomad scene, and I've met some of my best friends in Bali. They go out there for 2-3 months, surfing, yoga, co-working, and then they go to Portugal or they go back home to the US, right? So for me, to be honest with you, friendships has not become a challenge because I'm lucky in that my network has really expanded. But it took years. The average person, it would be very challenging for, and it would have been challenging for me too. But my network is very expansive, and now we're at a point where it's like, if I check in on Facebook at a new country, usually someone pings me, oh, I moved here, or you got to meet my friend, right? Or on Instagram now, somebody who follows me might be like, oh my God, I want to, meet you and hang out and grab a coffee. And I'll say yes a lot of times, right? I'm like, oh yes, please, thank God, someone reached out. And it got to a point where if I go to a place, I'll crave that. And if someone doesn't reach out, or it's been 2-3 days and I haven't had someone online hit me up, whether a contact or a friend of a friend or something hit me up, like, oh, you're in this country, I get depressed. I'm like, wait a minute, like, where are the people? I want to meet someone, And so for me, it's not that bad at all, because again, my network is so vast that I actually find I think of it as a plus. I think of it as a plus instead of like having the kind of mundane friendship relationships that sometimes I would have had when I was just living in one place, where it's like, okay, like, even though I had some crazy interesting friends, what made the variable there was, okay, this time we're going to this club instead of that club. This time we're going to this beach instead of that beach, right? But now it never gets to that point because the variable is the country and the people that I'm going to see, So it mixes it up, and I think between FaceTime and Zoom calls, it's not so bad. I actually see it as I see what could be a challenge actually as an opportunity to like go out and party with someone new in a new country.
That's honestly, for me, is the best. My last part of my life was performing music. Mm-hmm. So for me, I was performing 7 nights a week, pretty much a lot of the time. And that includes Christmas, New Year's, birthdays, Easter, Ramadan, all those things, right? So for me, I've never really been able to really have those deep connections with people where it's like, hey man, what are you doing at 5 o'clock today every single day? Let's go meet up and go to the local or something like that. I don't do that. And for me, it's been, I have that same sort of thing where a whole bunch of networks in different places and different circles and different acquaintances. And I don't think I'd ever want it any other way, because back to the thing before, it's live a life that's a story worth telling. And if you do the same thing with the same people all the time, it can be very difficult to have a story worth telling. You can have little different sort of situations that happen, but the stories stay within that same group, and it's very difficult to grow. So I've always found when I travel, again, I do the referrals on social media. I'll pin a new country and similar. I'll be like, oh, my friend's there. It's like, great, let's meet up. And it makes a really, really interesting sort of journey. And a lot of those experiences you'll never get if you just, hang around with the same people every single time. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people thrive on it. People need that certainty in a lot of ways. I've always been a lot more solitudinal.
Yeah.
I've always liked my own space, and then to be able to go and do whatever I want, wherever I want. So I think from my side, I think it's a perfect lifestyle. I think it'd be amazing.
Exactly. It's just fun. You mix it up, and then that's the other thing. It's like you end up having friends around the world because the ones you hang out with in that country, or even in Dubai, they end up being in another country in 2 years, and then you're in that country. So it's quite cool. Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah.
Hey?
Yeah. And the pandemic, I think, accelerated that, absolutely. You have even, I just spent 2 months in Bali at a co-working space, and so many of those people working for corporates. They work at corporate jobs for big companies, but they're digital nomads. You never used to see that before pandemic, right? It was just entrepreneurs. So
is this the one with the Starbucks? That's the hotel sort of thing?
Oh yeah, near that, yeah. Luxury Starbucks, yeah.
I've never went to Bali, not yet.
Oh, you got added to your list.
No,
You're gonna get addicted.
That's why I'm a little bit nervous. I think if I go there, I'll never come back.
Yeah. You're talking about prices in Dubai. It's true. It's like between your nightly rent and this big fresh salad bowl and everything, it's like $4, $5. It's just like crazy. But
sounds terrible. I think we're pretty close to having to wind up the podcast, right? So I'm going to ask a couple of just random rapid fire questions, whatever comes to my mind. So sure. What is your favorite animal?
I love cats.
Okay. What would you describe a cat in 3 words?
A cat is hard to get. A cat is mysterious, and a cat is loving.
So you just described yourself.
Did I?
You did. So for everyone watching, there's a bit of an insight into Uptin.
Is that what happens? Is that really?
It is. So you identify yourself with the animal that you like the most and the traits about it.
No way.
I had somebody last night say they like pandas because they're cuddly, playful, and cute. And as I walked into the thing I was speaking for last night, I was like, I didn't expect that from you. And now I know actually quite a lot more about you that I wouldn't have known before.
I'm going to try that. It's a good icebreaker.
It is. It really is. Last night I was doing this dinner where it was just, I was speaking and doing public speaking training, and it was just a home cooked dinner sort of thing, but it was an event, and I just asked everybody that thing, and everybody instantly knew more about each other than if they said, hey, where are you from?
Yeah.
What do you do? Do you like it here? How long you been in Dubai? The same 4-5 questions that happens every single time.
Yeah, I love that.
So do you have any icebreaker questions that you normally ask people?
Yes. So one that I recently started doing, I stole it from a friend, was make an assumption about somebody at the table. That can be a bit
good or bad one.
Well, that can be a bit pushing the envelope, but sometimes you need that at a good dinner or brunch. So yeah, I was at a brunch with like 12 of us here in Dubai, and somebody started the game. So you just go around and usually it's stuff like, you have one older brother, and they're like, yeah, how did you know? And it's like, you love Harry Potter, or like, you had a girlfriend at age 13 and your mom didn't approve. It's like really going into, and that's great because you learn about both people. Like, why are you projecting that onto this guy that you've never met?
I like that.
And then the person is like, it's crazy how much assumptions are often true just by that, quick handshake and sitting down. That's a really fun one, actually. Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to steal that. The next one.
But yeah, sometimes it gets a bit like, one of my favorites is like, you're an only child. And it's like,
you're a lonely person.
Yeah. Or a middle child. It's like, do I seem neglected?
What am I?
Ooh, you have an older sister. You really? You're giving,
I'm giving girls.
You have a younger sister.
No sisters.
Only child?
3.
You said brother. You literally said you went to Thailand with your brother.
Yeah.
And
I have 3 older brothers.
No way.
So I'm the baby.
No way. I'm also the baby. I have one older brother, but wow. And are they distance in years or?
Yeah. So the one that's above me is 8 years older.
Okay.
The eldest, sorry.
That's why I was getting, even though it took me a while. Okay.
Yeah.
4 is the oldest.
So
Okay.
so it's me, and then there's one 4 years up,
Okay.
7 years, and 8 years.
Okay.
So I'm the youngest child, but I kind of grew up with more female influences. So my dad wasn't around when I was a bit younger. I was hit and miss. So I spent a lot of time with mum. So I'd never had that huge masculine, like, yeah, I'm a man sort of
Yeah,
size, you
yeah.
know? So I get the sister vibes.
That's where I was picking up
Yeah,
on that.
I
That's
get
so
it.
interesting.
Yeah. And
So
I
interesting.
feel like you're an only child.
No, older brother. I have one older brother.
Okay. There's a bit of distance though, right?
3 years. But yeah, he's more like he's a lawyer, and so yeah.
So two sides of the same coin.
distance, yeah, in that way. Yeah.
Incredible. Wow. I'm going to start playing that game, I think.
That's a good one. I love guessing siblings of people.
I like it. I'm going to start stealing that actually. So you mentioned before that you used to train public speaking and communication, used to host workshops and do debate back in school. What got you into that and why did you like it?
I started doing speech and debate in high school, and I just fell in love with it because I felt that it's ultimately combining a sense of intellect and communication with oratory skills. And I just became really obsessed with the intersection of the two. And I think that's why I've always been interested in being a reporter or journalist, particularly like in broadcast television, because you have to present, but you also have to communicate. So it's challenging, right? Like you're doing the physical skills, but also the intellect. And yeah, it grew to take over me. And I did it in university. And then I actually hosted public speaking workshops in Bali. I did a bunch of corporates when I lived in Singapore, Hong Kong, and I loved it a lot. Sometimes they were 2 hours, sometimes they were 3 days, but I loved bringing people out of their shell, particularly because, as you know, most of the time it's getting over fear. It's not that they can't speak, it's the fear of, oh my God, what if I mess up? And so I love like the psychology behind it. And I have to use it a lot in my videos, right? It's not just a matter of talking on camera, but being able to eloquently say something complex in a simple and easy to understand way. So it's grown with me and it's evolved with me. And I'm a big proponent, particularly as we're more, online than ever with Zoom calls in our devices. I think like being able to have the right public speaking skills and people investing their time and potentially money into those skills is great.
And the thing you said there is like how to simplify complex topics into the least words as possible is one of the most valuable skills that you can ever develop. It's the Feynman techniques where you can explain something so simply to a child that they understand it. And nowadays, everyone's attention span is so short that if you don't do that, they look at you like you're an idiot. If you're trying to explain a complex topic and you go from A to H to Z back to B, they look at you and like, why did you just tell me that? What was the point? So being able to do exactly what you say, distill information into the smallest amount of words as possible, it's powerful to be able to do that. So I suggest everybody to do that if you can. So last one, if you had one insight or a key piece of advice for aspiring maybe entrepreneurs or content creators to get into the industry and just jump through the fear, what would you tell them to begin the journey so that they don't give up, or to know if it's right for them, I guess?
For content creators, I would say commit to consistency. Say you're going to do 3 videos per week no matter what, or maybe it's 5 videos per week no matter what, and commit to a duration. So maybe that's 6 months. And no matter what, you do that. No matter the circumstances, you do that. What that's going to do is it's going to eliminate the thought in your mind saying, oh, what if it flops? What if I get tired? What if I this? What if I that? Just do that. Commit to those 6 months. And then after 6 months, you can take a step back and analyze, do I want to continue doing this? Do I want to stop doing this? Maybe it was miserable. Maybe I thought I wanted to be a content creator, but I was miserable and it was stressful and it was way more work than I thought, right? Or maybe you've actually gotten some good traction and you've seen an increase in followers, and now you can continue on that path. But the biggest problem people make is that they don't commit to consistency, and they just kind of they leave it up to the algorithm gods to decide their fate. And we all know the algorithm gods do not like you your first year, right? Yeah. Maybe they'll like you once in a while, but for the most part, they don't like you. And so that's the one I would say there. And then advice for entrepreneurs, I would say, when I started out as an entrepreneur, I was all over the place, right? Like I used to have a manager that I reported to, and as long as my manager was happy, I was happy. That's all I needed, right? I had to learn how to manage myself, my emotions, my thoughts, my tasks, my goals, my different drives and motivations every day. That was a tough skill, right? That I never thought I would need. So I almost invested something like $4,000 or $5,000 into this coaching program. And I was like, ooh, should I do it? Should I not? And then I realized, what if I took that $4,000 or $5,000 and actually invested it in like a video editor and an account manager on my agency? And I'd never paid someone before to work, right? So instead, and I'm not discounting coaching. I think a lot of times self-development work is important. But for me, I took that $5,000 and I spent it on hiring 2 people. And what that did for me was, in that first month or 2, what that did for me was it motivated me in ways I could have never imagined. Because every day I would wake up and it's like, I'm giving my personal money to this person to help me build my business. I better show up. I better not get distracted. I better make sure that that investment is worth it, because that could have been rent money, that could have been food, that could have been a flight. So I think sometimes, like, put your money where your mouth is, go there, make that uncomfortable investment, because it's gonna, and that was the best motivator I ever had in my entrepreneurship journey, was like, and then all of a sudden people started to rely on income from my company. So then it wasn't stressful. It was good kind of pressure that I needed.
Great advice. Man, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. If people would like to reach out and work with you in some sort of capacity, how would they do that? Where would they find you? What would they do?
Yeah, they can just DM me on Instagram at Uptin, and would love to hear from people. I also run a video agency, so we do like TikTok takeovers for companies. So we create relatable content for companies to use on their TikTok, their Reels, and their Shorts.
Don't underestimate how powerful that sort of content is, by the way. If you're a company or if you're a brand, having the face of a company to actually relate to the audience is incredibly powerful. So make sure to reach out. Man, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Appreciate your time and having you, and sort of the insights and wisdom you've given to some people. So thank you very much, and see you all next time. Peace out.